Okay, so here's my goal. As we start doing the adjusting recipes, eventually we'll find a few recipes that I'll see if the foods class will make us maybe some cookies or something like that, okay? But so if you look at this one, it's all about adjusting the recipe depending upon how many people you're going to have. So sometimes you might need to double the recipe. Sometimes you might need to have it. Those are the kind of the most common. I do want to talk about how do we deal with doubling mixed numbers or fractions, because I can see even my juniors and seniors, you guys tend to forget how to deal with fractions. I don't know why, but it's just a thing, okay? So if you want to double a recipe and it says that there's 2.5 cups. Let's talk about how to double that. To multiply correctly by a fraction, you really need, mixed numbers really aren't helpful, okay? So I don't know if you remember this back from when you were like, maybe in 5th or 6th grade, but you're going to take and change this into an improper fraction. Let me remind you the rules so this will work. You're going to do 2 times 2 plus 1. So I just kind of think of it, you're going to multiply these two, and you're then going to add that result up here. So 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 1 is 5. So you're going to make that 5 over 2, okay? Now, if it's a whole number, we need it to look fractional, so then just put that whole number over 1. Okay, and then you multiply tops with tops and bottoms with bottoms. Sometimes you guys tend to want to do some kind of weird cross multiplication thing. That's only for our proportions that we did when we were doing scale drawings. That's important then, but now you just multiply tops with tops and bottoms with bottoms. Now you can do a little bit of cross canceling. So if there's a factor on top and a factor on bottom that matches, you can divide out that common factor. So in this particular case, the 2 here and the 2 here are common factors that you can cross out. Now technically you're just dividing that by 1, but you get 5 over 1, which is 5. Now if you did 10 over 2, that's still equal to 5, but you can see here that that 2.5 cups of flour needs to become 5 cups of flour. So we need to practice that, okay? Now, if you want to half a recipe and you have to divide by 2, let's talk this one through. To divide fractions, there's a weird, silly little rule, but it does work even from middle school on up to you guys, that you're going to keep this, change this, and flip. So keep, change, flip. It's a silly little thing, but it just helps you remember that. So we're going to need to still make them look like fractions. So we still have to do the rule. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So that's 7 over 2 divided by 2 over 1. As soon as you have it to that point, then you do the keep, change, flip. Okay? So we keep, we change, we flip. And then it becomes the rules that I discussed earlier. Multiply tops with tops and bottoms with bottom. We would need 7/4 of a cup. Now, 7/4 when you're in the, if you're in the kitchen and you're trying to measure out, if you have a 1/4 cup and you're trying to measure it 7 times, I'm easily distractible and I don't want to count 7 times because I'll miss something or I'll do something funky. So instead, now changing it back into that mixed number is important. How many times does 4 go into 7?
1.
It goes 1 time, right? Think about good old school division. It goes into it 1 time. How many's left over?
3.
So that 3 becomes how many fourths we have left over. So it's 1 whole cup and 3/4, okay? So you have to, think about fractions. I'd like you to practice and use fractions. I don't mind if you use a calculator, but those cups and things in the kitchen, they don't have the decimal 0.25. They don't have, I want you to keep the fractions as you go through this process, okay? So now let's look at what we want to do. So the main thing to remember is if you're having a recipe, you're dividing by 2. If you're doubling a recipe, we're multiplying by 2. And that's pretty straightforward, okay? So we have here, so if you want to make yourself 3 little columns on your paper, 3 little headings. We've got this stew we're making enough for 6 people, okay? But we want to make it for 30 people. So how could we figure out how many times we need to multiply the recipe by? If it's a 6-person recipe and we want to make it for 30, how do we figure out?
Rounded by 5.
How did you get that 5?
6 times 5 is 30.
Yeah, we know that if we want to figure out how many 6s are in 30, you can work your way backwards from multiplication, but we need to multiply by 5. Now here's the key. This is what I want to see on your paper. If you do 1.5 times 5, you can use that fraction button, but it's a good idea to practice some on your own. That would be 3/2 times 5 over 1, which is 15 halves. Let me scooch that over a little bit. That's 15 halves. 2 goes into, did I do that right? Yeah, 2 goes into 15 7 times with 1 left over, okay? So I want you to use fractions from beginning to end. Your final answer should be mixed numbers. There are sometimes where mixed numbers aren't super helpful, but for a recipe, we need to go back all the way to those mixed numbers, okay? And then it says, how much will you need for each ingredient? Wait, let's multiply by how many? Oh, so I think this just here, let's do it like this. In your first column, let's see if I can split this up. In your first column, just tell me 1.5 times 5, and then this is the actual math. So that's all we need to do. So like here, that would be 1 times 5, and so that's 5. And this is 2 times 5, so 10. That's all you're going to be doing for that section there, okay? So that is the one with the stew. And here, this recipe calls for 16 pieces. And again, you need 30. See, it says round up. For example, if you need 2.5 times more than one recipe, round it up to 3 times. So remember, we did something where we had to round, and I said when we round, you got to round up because then you'll make the recipe correct, or whatever we were doing correctly. Kind of the same thing here. So if you do 30 divided by 16, I believe you get 1 point something. Let me tell you what we get. We get 1.875. What should we round that to so we have enough for our guests? So we need it to be the next whole number. So what would we round it to? We would round it to 2. So we're going to multiply each of these by 2. So that's the column you want to use there. And that's the process you're going to do. You're just keep comparing with that 30 that you're trying to make your recipe for, okay? So your goal is to, see how much of this we can get through today, and then finish it up tomorrow if we need that class time. But it's all about just changing the recipe to fit how many guests you're having. Do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay.